Good evening. Buenos dias. A few days ago, Toby Fox released a statement regarding Latin American fans and the adaptation of Undertale and Deltarune to different languages. This is not a new issue, it's been a petition going around for years, and the situation goes far beyond just the Undertale community. Spanish countries have been marginalized for years by different sectors of the gaming and entertainment industries. This doesn't always happen out of malice or intolerance, but it's still a problem that should be understood by non-Spanish speakers. However, because of the bad nature of today's internet, I believe more people were focused on creating drama and reposting memes to get their 5 minutes of fame than actually explaining why the Hispanic fandom got as mad as they did. You had the bunch on the English side completely dismissing the evil foreigners asking for accessibility, y también tienes al grupo de niñatos asumiendo lo peor de la gente y creándose multicuentas para acosar a Tobias Zorro con memes fritos. I don't want to focus on these people. I believe this issue is important and that it needs to be addressed in a civic manner, so I'm trying for this video to be open-minded for both English and Spanish speakers. The Undertale fandom is diverse. We have fanworks, concerts, conventions, and celebrations for this game everywhere in the world. Overseas fans have been decisive to keep the love for these games alive, which is why the accessibility to them is a logical matter to consider. So all this said, let's ask the question again. Does Undertale need to be translated? Yes, the answer is yes. But here is why. Spanish is the fourth most spoken language in the world. We're also going to add Portuguese to the equation, which is in the 8th position, according to Wikipedia. These are both the predominant languages in Latin America, the countries that have spoken out the most about this matter, but are also used in Europe, Africa, and many other corners of the world. This situation is present in the entertainment industry as a whole, because despite being some of the most spoken language worldwide, a big part of the video game companies doesn't bother with making translation, prioritizing every other language first. It's worth mentioning this isn't exactly UTDR's case, because here the only exceptions are English as a native language and Japanese, a language that Toby Fox is fluent with, which leaves not only Spanish and Portuguese in the same bag, but every other language as well. However, knowing a bit of context with these communities, as well as other issues more related to Toby, like the situation with the symphonic concert and fangamer shipment policies, helps understand why it was either side of the world that initiated the discourse. Now, Toby's recent statement reads as follows. I know it sucks that there are no other official translations for Undertale, but I want to make it clear that this isn't because I have a grudge against other countries. It's because if I release something official, I want it to match my vision. I was only able to do this for the Japanese version because I know Japanese myself, and I work very closely with our brilliant translator to truthfully check the text. I am not against official translations for other languages if we could make it work the same way. In the past, I have looked into various options with my publisher 8-4, but nothing has come of that yet. Maybe I should try a different approach. I'm very happy that there are unofficial translations on PC. Considering I don't understand other languages, letting fans interpret the game without the burden of being officially perfect is amazingly helpful. Now, this was the reason most of us had speculated to be the case for years, and I think it's good to hear it straight from Toby after all this time. However, while I understand where he's coming from, I don't completely agree with him. Even if Toby doesn't believe he could achieve these localizations, there's more than enough proof that he can. The belief that your work and your vision cannot be translated because some parts of the writing will change is at its core wrong. The very existence of the official Japanese translation proves this argument wrong. Undertale is, at its origin, an English story. Its translation to Japanese came after. These two versions are fundamentally different games. No matter how much care and attention has been put to it, they will never be the same text, and the players who use one version or the other will never have the exact same experience. And that is okay. It's a translator's work to convey an artist's message. Toby knows this. He might have had a more direct input by learning Japanese himself, but the work was done alongside the 8-4 team, a team of translators, professionals whose job is to listen directly to Toby's guidelines. Then, They bring back every piece of dialogue back to him for feedback with a neatly wrapped explanation of why every change, big or small, has been made. They even made a whole book explaining this whole process. So if you trust a Japanese team to make it happen, you can find more teams of professionals around the world who will do the same. They exist, and they've proven to be exceptional at what they do. And while, yes, you could think that supervising a language you're able to speak is more satisfying, that doesn't make it a requirement. Most game directors in the world aren't plurilingual, but that doesn't have to be a problem because it's just not their job. It's the translators. Toby himself was only just starting to learn Japanese back when 8.4 started to work. Toby's way of thinking about this strikes me as someone who's used to take charge of everything. Knowing where he comes from, this makes sense. Undertale was a small project done mostly by him and a small group of contributors. Later, he realized he needed more help to make Deltarune happen. He put together a bigger team, but still small when compared to bigger game producers. So I understand why he thinks the way he does, because it's the way he's always worked. And this brings up another interesting topic. Does localization need to be flawless? It doesn't. Perfection doesn't exist. We may have our own idea for what's perfect, but it could be the complete opposite of what somebody else thinks. Undertale is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. Toby does have a very unique writing style, and it made a huge impact on me growing up. But the first time I experienced it was through the lens of a fan translation, in a YouTube Let's Play series by Rango Gamer, who is a guy who laughs like this. Even though my first experience went through all these filters, even if it wasn't pure, I could still feel the essence that makes Undertale so special. The dialogues felt fresh. It resonated with me in a way few games did before. And when I compare it to the original in English, which I played later on my own, I felt the same. Yes, it was different, but not that different. The fan translation wasn't perfect. Some parts took some liberties with the meaning, others felt like they didn't hit the same vibe, but because these are fan translations, they had the liberty to write as they pleased. And this can cause misconceptions, precisely because the creator has decided to have no input on it. For example, one big reason I believe a lot of UTDR fans believe the protagonist's pronouns, among other characters, were up to interpretation without even considering they could be non-binary is because up until now, many fans depended on fan translations that couldn't know what the intent was. I believed this myself for many years, before Toby had to correct someone on Chris's pronouns during a stream. However, despite the flaws, it was good for most people to discover the game. And while Toby's writing has a very unique taste, that doesn't make it a Shakespeare novel. I can assure you 99% of the base dialogue remains with the exact same words used as the original. When it comes to translation in these games, some of its harder parts to localize are pronouns, wordplay and puns. Hard, but not impossible, especially for professionals. English and Spanish are far more close as languages than English and Japanese. And while you need a few tricks to make this work, that's what localization is all about. Let's look at a similar situation. One Shot is a game that was translated to several languages years after its release. It's a game based entirely on dialogue, employs expressions and symbolisms specific to their language, and has a gender-neutral protagonist who uses neutral pronouns. Despite a much smaller budget and lower popularity than the one Deltarune has today, One Shot managed to pull through with localization. Puns can be one of the easiest parts of this whole equation, because even if the pun itself changes completely, the essence of the moment is there. Take this for example.
A skeleton tiles his roof with shingles.
Is not the same as
Al esqueleto le gusta la sopa tibia. Ay, Dios mío, me voy a morir.
Different. But this is the tool that keeps the essence. You have a scene with a clever wordplay that will transmit the closest feeling to the original. And yes, sometimes this can be harder or even lost in translation. But I think sometimes it's okay to sacrifice the original words if it means you can have the full game translated. I've been making Undertale fanworks and comics for almost half of my life now, It was my main inspiration to pursue an art career, and it helped me take a path where I met lots of friends in real life and all around the world as well. And if that gameplay didn't exist, if this YouTuber didn't have a fan translation to share the series with his Spanish audience, none of my current life would have happened. It's the reason why I take time to translate my own work to my native language, and even why I trust other people to make adaptations to languages that I don't speak. I might never be able to check how accurate their work is, but it's still a way to share my art to other people, and I'm immensely grateful for it. But yes, translating a comic made as a hobby doesn't require as much time and resources as an entire video game. So to take this a little further, let's compare it to a more extreme example. Ace Attorney is one of the most beloved visual novel franchise in the entire world, and the reason for this is its localization. A localization that does a lot of things that today would be considered sin, like pretending the whole story and characters were set in California when they're all clearly Japanese people in Japanese towns. And yet, against all odds, it worked, not only with the English localization, but with the ones that followed. The Spanish localization of Ace Attorney is exceptional. It's one of the best video games translations we've ever had. The jokes were perfectly captured for the Spaniard players. The story and its characters have stuck to us for years after the first trilogy, which is why so many of us are still begging Capcom to bring back the recent entries to our language, a struggle that English audiences went through as well, by the way. The difference is that you got what you wanted, while the rest of us still ate shit. Whether you agree or not with the decisions made with this franchise, the reality is that the localization overshadowed the original. The world knows Phoenix Wright way more than they know Ryuichi Naruhodo, but this allowed everyone to meet and love this series. And that's something its creator, Shu Takumi, should feel proud of. Because even if it's not all his work anymore, allowing the adaptation brought happiness to thousands of people, and that still wouldn't be possible if he never made the original. I'm not saying this to claim Toby's work should do such a faraway translation from the original. In this day and age, it'd be stupid to translate Sans as
Sebastián el huesudo chistoso.
But Ace Attorney proves that even a flawed localization can be a good one. Not knowing Japanese myself, I dare to say there's parts of the game that couldn't be completely accurate, no matter how much of a fluent speaker Toby was. And if he was willing to make sacrifices then, he can do it for the rest of the world as well. But even after all I've said, I'm sure there's still people who think the ideal way to play Undertale is in English. So let's look at another question that's been brought up recently. Do we need to know English to experience media properly? Here is where I have to get a bit more real. This might seem like a stupid question that doesn't need to be addressed. However, for the last couple of days, I've kept seeing responses from the English community that makes me realize how little this problem is known outside of our countries. Not just because of this vocal minority of idiots who didn't care to go xenophobic against the Latin community, but more because of the well-behaved people. Most of the English side I've seen seems to view Toby's reason as completely reasonable, while the Spanish side saw it mostly as irrational or straight-up nonsensical. Thanks to the internet, we're able to communicate with people all around the world, and by pure chance, the most spoken language in the world happens to be English. So I can get why sometimes Anglophones might feel like everyone speaks it these days, but the internet is not the whole world, and English is not the center of it. Even within the Spanish community, there's debate among our peers of whether it's better to watch sub or dub. Pretty similar to the English community when it comes to things like anime or other series from outside their country. Everyone has a take on how they like to engage with media, and that's valid. Like, although I'm a firm believer that Undertale and Deltarune should be officially translated someday, I have to confess that personally, I'll still prefer the English version, because it's the one I'm used to by now and the one I've enjoyed the most. Adaptations are an unnecessary resource, but also a subjective one. There are works where I prefer the dub version because it's well done, and it resonated with me more than the source material. And there are adaptations that, even if I didn't like them as much as the original, I value them because they offer something new and they help to introduce stories to other people who might have never experienced them otherwise. To some of us, localization can feel more like a commodity, but for a lot of people it's accessibility. Try to view this from a different perspective. Up to this point, a lot of you have been able to follow my explanation because I'm narrating in English. Pero, ¿qué ocurre si de repente hago esto? Puede que sepas suficiente español para entenderme, o por lo menos para hacerte una idea de lo que estoy diciendo. O a lo mejor no. Entonces, ¿ahora qué hacemos? Quizás has activado los subtítulos automáticos de YouTube para que hagan el trabajo. Quizás has visto que alguien considerado te ha hecho el favor de dejar una traducción en los comentarios. Por supuesto, esa persona no soy yo, y tendrás que fiarte de su interpretación para entender mi mensaje. La cuestión es que, al empezar este vídeo, has tenido todas las comodidades disponibles para ti. Pero en el momento que decido no dártelas, has tenido que apañártelas por ti mismo. Y eso es lo que el fandom español ha sentido muchas veces en su vida. Tras esta breve pausa en la que hemos aclarado por qué a Papyrus le gustan los espaguetis, podemos seguir hablando de cómo las localizaciones garantizan cierta accesibilidad. En mi país, España, tenemos un debate desde hace varios años entre el uso de doblajes o el ver series en su idioma original. Y tiene un origen muy antiguo. Muchas de las adaptaciones dobladas de series y películas que llegaron a España en el siglo XX pasaron el filtro de la censura franquista. Al terminar la dictadura, la cosa evolucionaría con los años. El doblaje iría adquiriendo mayor calidad y fidelidad. Pero mucha gente de la generación de mis padres, entre los 70 y los 80, sigue teniendo cierto resentimiento hacia el doblaje como oficio, porque durante muchos años fue la única alternativa, y muchos disfrutaron de experimentar historias en versión original por primera vez en su vida. Pero en los videojuegos pasó una cosa distinta, ya que aquí en los primeros años de la industria ocurría más al revés. El juego te llegaba en inglés, y los chavales tenían que apañárselas por sí mismos para jugar sin entender ni papa. En lo personal, me posiciono un poco entre los dos. Con las series me gusta verlas en original, y a lo mejor echo un vistazo al doblaje para ver qué tal está. Y con los videojuegos, los juego primero en español, si está disponible. Y después, si me apetece, me miro la versión inglesa en un Let's Play. Lo que no voy a hacer es dar lecciones a nadie sobre cuál es la forma correcta de experimentar una obra. Yo soy un niñato del 2002. No he vivido pasarte Ocarina of Time de la 64 con una guía ASCII descargada de una página plagada de troyanos. Porque yo Zelda lo descubrí con la 3DS. He crecido con unos recursos que me han permitido disfrutar de obras dentro y fuera de mi idioma, pero puedo empatizar con la perspectiva de quien tuvo una experiencia distinta a la mía. He visto muchas reacciones de indignación hacia Toby que me han parecido exageradas, y que aunque comparto el sentimiento, no comparto el enfado. Pero también soy consciente de que, sobre todo para una generación por encima de mí, hay gente que las localizaciones son un tema que les toca emocionalmente. También conviene señalar que algunas de las personas que critican a Toby Fox por esto subestiman el trabajo de los traductores. He visto a mucha gente diciendo que son solo palabras, que eso no cuesta nada y que hasta lo puedes hacer con una IA. No me parece justo exigir algo si no valoras el trabajo de quien lo va a realizar. Adaptar esas palabras de una u otra manera puede alterar por completo la percepción de una obra, especialmente en un juego como este. Tener en cuenta aspectos como los pronombres, los chistes, los dobles sentidos y los simbolismos sí que importan en Undertale y Deltarune, e implementarlo en español correctamente lleva su tiempo. Pero de nuevo, difícil, no imposible. Toby tiene las herramientas, el dinero, la fama y el tiempo para lograrlo. Y al igual que no estoy de acuerdo con partes del fandom hispano que se intenta desahogar de la forma más hiriente posible, tampoco lo estoy con quienes lo desestiman todo desde la parte inglesa. Aprender inglés cambió mi vida para mejor, y siempre defenderé que deberíamos fomentar su aprendizaje a cualquier edad. Pero la educación no puede ser unilateral. Los angloparlantes también podéis beneficiaros de aprender más idiomas, porque aprender de otras culturas lleva a crear un arte más interesante. Undertale juega con el privilegio de convertirse en un éxito mundial, algo que Toby nunca se vio venir cuando planteaba hacer un juego con sprites hechos en el Paint. Pero para el resto de los desarrolladores, especialmente aquellos que no son angloparlantes, traducir su trabajo es una necesidad indiscutible si quieren dar su juego a conocer. Tener el privilegio de saber inglés y vivir en una época donde es más accesible que nunca, no cambia que aún hay personas que no lo han tenido tan fácil. Hay quien no puede acceder a esa educación, o tienen impedimentos médicos o físicos que les impide dominarla. Dependen de herramientas como traducciones, doblajes y subtítulos para poder disfrutar del arte. Y eso es un derecho del que deberíamos luchar siempre por su garantía. Es normal sentirse frustrado porque muchos productos no son accesibles para nosotros. Yo también lo he vivido, y no voy a decirte, aprende inglés, como si eso solucionara todo. Pero la cantidad de acoso que ha generado esta situación no está bien. Montarse teorías conspiranoicas y poner en boca a un creador frases que nunca ha dicho no está bien. Todos hemos crecido en entornos distintos, y aunque algunas partes del mundo puedan ser ignorantes de los problemas de otra, no me parece correcto asumir siempre lo peor. No elegimos nacer sin saber, pero sí elegimos aprender. No estoy de acuerdo con la opinión que ha expresado Toby en este asunto, pero es una persona a la que sigo teniendo mucho respeto. Ha hecho grandes donaciones a caridad, múltiples veces. Ha salido en defensa de la comunidad en el pasado y utiliza su plataforma para apoyar a proyectos más pequeños. Está en una situación de poder en la que me aterraría estar, con gente acosándole por redes todos los días para preguntarle por sus juegos y tergiversando cada palabra que sale de su boca. Pero también es una persona. Comete errores, es imperfecto como todos nosotros. Undertale is one of the most influential games of our time, and it deserves to be localized to other countries. Hatred is not the way to get them, and hatred is not the way to defend Toby either. This doesn't mean that there's nothing to be criticized, and I believe a lot of people, myself included, have a valid reason to feel a bit disappointed. And yes, it's still his game and his choice, one that's perfectly valid, but it's a choice I will not agree on. And reading his statement, I still hope that he's willing to give translation a second chance in the future. I sincerely hope this video has made this whole mess easier to understand for some people. The fight for localizations is still strong in Spanish-speaking countries, and I'm sure it's the same for many other languages around the world. Even if sometimes it can break intense discussions like this, I believe the main goal of localization is to bring people together. It's a gate for us to learn from other cultures and to share our own culture as well. That's what makes it worth fighting. I'm still waiting for the end of Deltarune with the same excitement I had from day one. And even if it took another 10 years, I'll still wait for its localization as well, because bringing people together is a message that these games carry.
Long as you get to the point, the words don't matter.
Mientras lo hayas entendido, las palabras no importan.